Okay, so today we're going to talk about the supplies the NSA needs. This is an overview of must-haves and some of mine and Coast to Coast favorite products as a notary. Now, before we get into it, none of this is sponsored. This is just legitimately our favorite stuff. So there's no advertising here. It's just advertising my favorites and our favorites. And I'll give you some tips and tricks and things that maybe a newer signing agent might not know along the way, and things I've learned, and I keep learning and I keep finding out new stuff. So this is just some of our favorite stuff. So let's get right into it. Okay, so we'll talk about your notary supplies. So let's talk about some must-haves as a notary. So a must-have, your notary stamp, right? You need this. This is what makes the notarization official. Now, every state's a little different in how you obtain your stamp. In California, when you get your commission, you get an authorization to manufacture seals. You go online or to a manufacturer, you send them that authorization after you've purchased what you want with the information that should be on your stamp. And once they receive that authorization, then they can produce stamps, because you can't just get stamps produced, right? That would be scary. There'd be so much fraud out there, right? People would just be like, I'm going to make a stamp and notarize my own stuff, even if I'm not a notary. That'd be kind of scary. So there's most states require, there's a process that you get some authorization. Let's talk about just some of our advice. Always purchase multiple stamps. Now, if you're mid-commission, which probably most of you are, and you've only purchased one, it might be too late until your next commission comes around, or you're going to have to request another authorization to produce stamps from the Secretary of State in whatever state that you're in. So if you're new, though, you want to purchase multiple. You're going to need it if you're a notary signing agent, right? My first commission purchased one stamp, and there were times that I'd be panicking, where's my stamp, where's my stamp? You really need to keep a nice tight grip on your stamp, but every once in a while it'll get lost in your bag or in your car or in your office. So having multiple is nice. And it's also nice because there's different types, right? And different shapes and sizes. And so you can kind of decide according to the document what's needed. I suggest, and I think any signing agent will tell you, a self-inking or pre-inked stamp is what you want. The old-fashioned wooden stamp that you dip into an ink pad is a pain in the butt. You don't want that, right? It's messy. And even though it's kind of fun to do if you're doing like 1 or 2 documents a week, when you're doing multiple, you really need a self-inking stamp. And there's a lot of options. Because I said I get multiple, right? So 2 or more, depending on what's allowed. You want to get a low profile stamp, at least one low profile stamp, one where you can really clearly see how big the stamp impression is going to be. If it's too big, like this one to the right, you see this kind of green topped X stamper. It might be a really smooth stamp, and it produces a beautiful impression almost every time. But if the portion for where you stamp the document is little, or you really need to be precise, or it's going to go over some verbiage, which sometimes a county might kick back, right? A low profile is wonderful because it really shows you, the surface of the stamp and how big it's going to be. So I always suggest getting a little skinny guy like these two. There's a round one and then there's a square one. I always get one round and one square and make sure that one of those is low profile so I can kind of clearly see how big the stamp's going to be. The prices vary. My favorite place to get my notary supplies is notaryrotary.com. That's my go-to. I feel like the prices are reasonable. They don't do a ton of marketing, so I feel like they can keep their prices a little lower. And the price range is from 18 for this kind of basic stamp. It's a self-inking stamp though, so it's a good one, to 34. And this little one to the right, that's a green, the X Stamper Eco Green, that's $34. So the quality may vary a little bit. With the cheaper one, you're still going to get a nice looking stamp, but maybe you need to put the right pressure on it. And if you don't, it'll come out blotchy or won't look right. But I would say if you are new to your commission, or maybe your commission's expiring soon, like mine's expiring in May. So I'm going to take my class and test next month. I'm going to get a variety, right? I'm going to get a low profile. I might get a little cheapy guy like this, and I might get one nice one. It's worth the investment. Trust me. If you lose your stamp too, which you have to typically, according to your state, report that to the Secretary of State, because imagine the damage done, or if someone gets a hold of that stamp, right? You don't want that. You're going to be grateful that you can still work when you have a second stamp, right? I've had notaries lose their stamp and they're out of commission until the Secretary of State gets them another authorization to produce a stamp. And if you know government, right, who knows how long that's going to take. And right now I'm in California. Everything when it comes to the notary world is taking much longer than it normally would, probably because of COVID and because of the increase in people that want to be notaries, right? So that's my advice on stamps. I love Notary Rotary. That's where I get all my stamps from. Okay, must have a journal. Now, some states don't require journals. We suggest getting a journal, even if your state doesn't require it. It's a way to keep track of what you've done, right? It protects you, it protects the signers. It's also, it can be your log. So come tax time, you need to know how much you need to put for mileage and supplies and what you've done. This can be your record keeping book. So even in states that don't require it, we always suggest it. Also, as a notary signing agent, remember a notary and a notary signing agent are different. You have to be a notary to be a signing agent, but not all notaries are signing agents. They don't know how to complete loan docs. But in a set of loan docs, like a refinance set, there may be a Patriot Act, which requires you to add the signer's ID information. The journal is a great place to store it. So when your state requires it, it's always right there, and you keep note of what you notarized, and you have your signer's signature and potentially a thumbprint, depending on the forms that we're notarizing, and it's all in one place. We suggest get a journal. And my favorite journal, again, you can get it from Notary Rotary for $18.95, and it's the Modern Journal of Notarial Events. This is the best journal out there. This is the one you want to get. End of story. There's all sorts of really pretty ones. Forget about pretty. Get one like this. So if it's pretty and it has everything that this one has, where it lists the typical documents you're going to notarize, then cool. There's also a lot of space on it. There's a place where you can put the file number, if it's been paid, the fee. It's just a really wonderful journal. It also comes in softback and hardback. I always get the hardback because sometimes we're signing not at a table, right? So all of a sudden you have a little mini table that you can stamp from if needed. So I get the hardcover Modern Journal of Notarial Events. Love this journal. You may also need a thumb printer. In some states, you don't need to obtain the signer's thumbprint. Or if you're in a state that doesn't require a journal, then you're probably not going to do that. But we suggest getting it. It's, again, a good way to protect our signers. Again, we're notary publics, means our job is to take care of the public. And it's a good, good way to cover your own back too. Now, a quick note on thumb printing: when the form doesn't require it or your state doesn't, you can't force the signer to. This is very rare, but one time in the hundreds of thousands of signings we've done, a notary insisted on their thumbprint, and the signer maybe was a notary and said, "I don't want to give it to you." And the notary kind of made a big deal out of it, and signer was upset, and it was one of those kind of like damage control situations, right? So know your state's requirements. I as a general rule, will always ask signers to let me have their thumb impression, even if it isn't a document like a power of attorney or a transfer of real property, like a deed, which is California's requirements for thumbprints. I always obtain it, and I've never had anyone dispute it. I always just say, sign my journal and thumbprint, and people are happy. A really good thumb printer is, again, from my favorite place, Notary Rotary. And also, no one sponsored this video. I just love Notary Rotary. It's a real simple site, and I like the supplies. But my favorite is the AccuPrint Professional. They're all very similar. There's also this Notary Public Stuff thumb printer. You don't want one that will leave a mess. They all claim to be almost invisible. They're really not invisible. There's always like a little oily print on your finger, but it comes off when they rub their hands together, the signers. So it's a little deceiving, not totally invisible, but they're getting there. And probably the next time I make a video like this, the technology will be even better. But you don't want the one that's going to leave, like, you're going to have to really wash your hand, right? We're not like taking their prints like at a police station, right? We're just taking that thumbprint. So you want one specific to the notary world. A quick tip that might not feel like a big deal, but if you're going to be a signing agent, you're going to lose your thumb printer unless you're super organized. I am not super organized. I start out that way, and by the end of the day, my notary bag's a mess. These little thumb printers are small and circular, right? Get a little piece of double-sided tape, like those little squishy foam ones, and tape it to the front of your journal. That way it's always there. Nothing's worse than getting to a signing and you realize you left your thumb printer and it's a deed, right? Or it's a document, you have to have it. And you have to go home, grab your thumb printer, come back, get that one thumbprint. It's a waste of time. You're not going to get paid for it, right? But you have to do it. So that's my little suggestion. I think my brother did that and I copied him. And so you should do it too, or else you're going to lose your thumb printer and you're going to make another trip. We don't want you to do that. So that's what I do. And it does save you and one less stress, right? There's always that, like when you forget something, that fear, like that your body turns hot and you're like, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, or I left something at home. I have to go back. So that's a little tip for you. Okay, next up, this is another must-have if you are going to be a signing agent. If you're going to do general notary work, you don't necessarily need this, but if you're a signing agent, which is where the money is, right, for the most part, unless you've got a cool general notary work gig that pays really well and is consistent, which there are some out there like that. But for the most part, you want to expand what you can do, right? So you want to be a signing agent. So you must obtain a background check. Now, this is different than the one that your state might require, like a live scan. So in California, to become a notary, you have to pass a live scan. This is a separate and additional annual background check you have to obtain. The place you want to obtain it is the National Notary Association. We all know the NNA. That's where you want to obtain your background check. There's other places. There's Sterling. There's background checks online. Many companies will require the National Notary Association. To become Fidelity approved, you have to have an NNA background check or a Sterling, but NNA is actually easier for us to find. Sterling is a little more complicated to locate for like a signing company who might need to audit that. NNA is a company, it's a for-profit company. Their name is a little deceiving, but they're for-profit, right? They're not a government entity. So they're gonna sell you stuff, right? And I included this as an image. There's no negativity in this, but if you're a new notary, you need to keep your budget low, right? So really all you need is the NSA background check screening only, which is just the minimum. It's going to be the background check that you need to do annually, as well as the certification. The certification is a 45-question test. It's multiple choice and open book. So you have to pass that and pass the background check, and there you go. You're now NNA approved. The screening only, which includes that test and the background check, is $70 right now. So there's so much out there, right? And you might think, oh my goodness, I absolutely need all of these things. You might not need all of those things, you know. I'd say background check to start. You can add those other items. It also gives you 20% off of supplies. You can go for it, but if you're like, hey, I need to keep it tight, my budget's tight, or you haven't started making money as a notary yet, so you want to keep that lower, just the background check is all you need. Okay, so another must-have is our printer, right? We need a printer. If you don't have a printer as a notary, we've got a problem. You're not going to make money. I've talked to notaries who, oh, I go to FedEx to print my docs. Do not do that. Invest in a printer now. You're going to lose money. You're not going to be making much, right? You need your margin for making money to be big. So you got to find a good printer that's cost effective. Unfortunately, when making this video, I realized how expensive everything is right now. Everything's gone up so much. 2 years ago when I bought my printer, or 3 years ago now, it was $400. It's $600 now. Inflation, it's a pain in the butt. But it is what it is. And this is an item we absolutely need. So you want a laser printer. Do not get an ink printer. You're not going to make much money. I've had an ink printer that I used for loan docs, a really neat, fancy one. And too much money, lots of money. So you want a laser printer. You also need a scanner. Now, this is something that I have it on the must-haves because as a signing agent, you want to open yourself up to taking as much work as possible, right? So lots of clients want scans right now. Not all of them and not all files require it, but a lot of them do. And I don't want you to ever have to say, I can't do it, right? And most of the time with scanning jobs, they pay a little bit more money, right? And once you get a good scanner that's easy to use, scanning is a breeze. I'm a nerd. I think it's fun. You might also be a nerd and think it's fun to scan your docs. In fact, I'll tell my notary friends, hey, if you need to use my scanner, come over and drop off the docs. I'll scan them for you. Or like, we'll do it together. You can use my scanner because I love it. You might ask what brand. Again, there's so many brands out there. In our experience, we always go for a Brother or an HP when it comes to our printer. Brother in particular, I've had many Brother printers. I've had one HP that was the best printer ever. At the time, it was expensive back then. It was 10 years ago. It was like, I think $500. It's over $1,000 now. So I'm not going to recommend that one because they realized what a good thing they had. It's the fastest printer I've ever had. But here's the images here, and we'll talk about, these are some more affordable printers. What you want in a printer. Whatever printer you have, what you want is a fast, monochrome, so you just need black and white, wireless printer. I like wireless because I can connect it from my phone. So what if the docs come in and I'm gonna take a shower? Right before I jump in the shower, I can get started on printing the docs, which is cool. When we say fast, I'd say the best speed that isn't crazy fast, but still gets those docs out quickly is 42 pages a minute. That's pretty good. So if a set of loan docs is 180 pages, that's just a few minutes, right? If it's any slower than that, you might feel really slow. You also want a dual tray. I put it in a must-have. You can get away without having a dual tray. Basically, a printer that has 2 trays that can pull from letter size page and then legal at the same time. That way most loan docs are both of those, right? So you can, with a dual tray printer, you can print both of them at the same time as long as you formatted your printer and your computer to pick up the documents that way. An alternate printer. I put it in as a must-have because for me, it's a must-have. For you, if you're newer, if you're like, I'm not willing to invest in a second printer, just know that you're gonna have printer problems. So you better become a genius at your printer, or at least know how to troubleshoot, or your husband or wife better be a genius, or your mom or dad, like I had. Whoever, someone in your life needs to be, or you need to become one, because you're going to have printer issues. Even with the best printers, you're going to have moments where there's a jam that you can't figure out, or you really have to take things apart, or you just inexplicable. You don't know why it's not working. So I always have a cheap cheaper. Nowadays, nothing's cheap. Unfortunately, these used to be cheap, but now they're $350. But a little printer that in a bind, I never have to ask to be reassigned from a file because I have a second printer. So that's something that I have invested in over time. So once I started making money as a notary, I was like, I'm going to get me another little printer because I can continue to make money and I can become faster, make more money quicker by having two printers. So these are the two printers that I recommend the most, which is this first one is the Brother MFCL 5700DW business laser all-in-one printer with duplex printing and wireless networking. Whew, that's a lot of words. My printer came just like this. It's a printer and then a scanner. The scanner also has a flatbed, but there's also the feeder, which is what you use for loan docs, right? It didn't come with that second tray, so I had to purchase it separately. Right now, that second tray is $149. This printer right now is $632. It's gone up a lot, but it's a great, reliable printer. I like it a lot. The scanner is super fast and super easy to use. And it gives you different ranges of the quality of the scan. So if you need something super crisp, it'll do it for you. And then this is a little second printer that one might get. Like I said, I used to be able to get this printer for like $100. It's $356. I hate telling you guys this. So depressing how expensive things are. But those are the two printers that I currently use and that I recommend. Hopefully printers will go down, but search around, right? Look for the best deal. You're going to find discounts, and a lot of the big box places have discounts. So these are my two favorite printers. Okay, another must-have is a computer, right? Now I included a picture of the Mac. That's the computer I have now. As a notary, I did not have a Mac. I am on the computer for 50 hours a week for work. So I have to have something that has a lot of functionality. I am not recommending you get a Mac because it's expensive, but you need some kind of computer. You need it for basic use. So you're downloading documents, you're opening internet browsers, you're opening PDF viewers. Most signing agent platforms or work that you're going to get is just from the internet. So you're not going to be downloading any big programs other than docs. Doesn't matter what you get, laptop, desktop, it's totally up to you. As a notary, I always had a laptop. That way I could work around the house. I didn't have to stay in my office. I could be in my bedroom, print docs. And if you have a wireless printer, that's pretty easy. But whatever you get, it should come with the USB port to connect to your printer. Because even if you have a wireless printer, sometimes there's issues and you need to just straight up connect. Or if you're scanning your docs, you're going to need to actually connect the printer to your computer. I can't wirelessly scan docs on my printer that you just saw a picture of and is right behind me, if you can see my camera. But make sure it has a USB port, right? Some computers don't have those anymore. So weird, but it's true. I wrote down some just general stats. Now, I do not know much about technology, but this is basically what you need, I think. And if there's anybody out there, you can, in the question and answer, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong on this. But you need computer memory of, I'd say, 8 GB of RAM. That's like the sweet spot. Minimum of 320 to 500 GB of hard drive. You want an antivirus software. I have bought all sorts of computers for myself and for our company. When I've been cheap, the employee hates their job and me, right? They're like, my computer is so slow, because I thought, well, they only need it for just checking out the internet. Maybe that's all their work consisted of, but it's super slow. So right now I'd say you're going to pay, I don't know, $600 to $1,000 for a decent computer. Just everything's expensive. I hate it. It's stupid, but it is what it is. Don't go super cheap on your computer. You're going to need to download docs, and you don't want it to be a turtle, right? You want it to be as quick as possible. I'm spoiled. If things are running at all slow, I have a panic attack. You don't have to have the fanciest or the most expensive. That being said, we do not recommend any specific computer, use these guidelines and then stick to your budget. So it's, again, there's certain things you have to invest in if you don't have them. Make a budget, stick to it. You might find and then look online for deals, right? Best Buy is great. The more you buy at Best Buy, the more rewards you get, and that's money. So you might want to check Best Buy out and see, or if you have rewards already at Best Buy, use that money to buy a computer. But this is just kind of my general guidelines from a non-tech person, but a notary who's done it a long time. So I know a little bit of what we need. Okay, another must-have. This is now very cheap or free, depending on what you get. As a notary signing agent and a notary, you need a mobile scanning app. So this app on your phone turns your phone into a scanner. So you can scan anything, including documents, notes, receipts, anything you can take a picture of, you can convert it into a clear and sharp PDF or an image. And it also can combine multiple forms. So I would not get this as a replacement for a actual scanner, right? Like the one I have that's a printer scanner combo or a single scanner. It really shouldn't be used to scan full sets all the time. Why? It's going to take you forever. You have to line the page up correctly, make sure it's a nice clear image, make sure your thumb isn't in there or your pen or whatever. I can tell, unless the person is really meticulous, I can always tell when someone scanned a full set using their mobile scanner. It's just not a great quality scan. Now, I've done it for years where I just used my mobile scanner because I was lazy. And you can get, which doesn't make sense because a desk, like a regular scanner that's stationary, is so much easier, but you know, logic that for a lazy person doesn't really come into play sometimes. But it does work in a situation where you're like, oh, shoot, escrow is on me, I need to get these docs scanned. Or if you're between signings and say they need a scan. It's really best for error corrections or miscellaneous signings or just general notary work, right? It's something you can offer your signers. Say you're just doing a deed, someone called you to do a deed or a POA or a trust or whatever it is, and you can say, do you want a scan of these docs? They say, oh, that would be great, actually, so I can forward them to my mom or whoever, and you can just, from the signing table, take a few pictures, convert it into a PDF, send it over. It's fabulous. I use it every day. I now have gotten smarter, and I use if I'm in office, I use my regular scanner because it actually produces a better scan, but this totally works. So definitely get a mobile scanner. I use the Tiny Scanner app. There's a free one, and then I think there's one for like $4, and it's a flat $4 forever, I think. And so I bought that one just because of how much I use it. I think it has a little more memory, but the free one is perfectly fine. There's a million different kinds. Tiny Scanner is just the one I've always used. So that's what I recommend, but you can get anything, you know, CamScan, Genius Scan. There's all sorts of apps out there. Okay, another notary or must-have as a notary. Now, this is, again, I think it's a must-have. I think my brother right now doesn't have a notary bag, but I think a notary bag is a must-have. You can wing it and just carry some pens and your stamp in your journal and your docs, but it's so much nicer to have everything in a bag, right? So it needs to be large enough, I'd say, to hold at least 2 sets of docs, both legal and letter size. So it needs to be long enough to hold a set of legal documents. It needs to be big enough to hold your journal and your stamp and some pens, right? Some general supplies. You also always want to have in your bag a little folder that has extra acknowledgements and jurats. Always have them in your notary bag. You never know when you need them. So that's just a must-have. And we recommend going on Amazon. If you go to like a big box store, those bags are going to cost like $100, like 75 to $100. You can get both of these are like under $30 or $35, and they look good. And, you know, it can be an accessory. So if you're just a shopaholic like me, you can, you know, pick out a cute notary bag or a utility notary bag. It really doesn't matter. Just have something where you can always keep your supplies, easily transfer them from your car to the signing to your house. It's going to save you in the long run. I'm going to give you a little example of something that happened this week that made me think of, you know, this slide made me think of it. It actually was kind of a disaster. Notary printed a set of docs and didn't put the docs in her notary bag. The signing was 45 miles away. She gets to the signing with no loan docs. Like horrible feeling. That's worse than leaving your stamp at home, So she had to go back. Borrower was like, it's late. You're going to have to come back tomorrow. It required a redraw because those docs were date sensitive. And then the notary couldn't do it at the scheduled time the next day. Our client canceled the signing with us. The lender had their own notary, had to get it done. Everyone was really, really mad. The client asked us to not use her anymore. So having a notary bag that you stock, and it's like the thing you do before you leave every time is put those docs in the bag, be real present, is going to save you, right? So make that your habit. And by the way, that's also happened to me. It's just never happened where it's been so far, right? That happened like not even a year ago, but the signing was 5 minutes away. So I got there and said, I'm going to be back in 5 minutes, right? And I left, and it still felt like a ding dong, but not the end of the world. Sometimes it can be a big deal though, right? So there's a little story for you. Let's briefly talk about our reoccurring supplies. So this is the stuff you're going to need to always get. And again, as with everything right now, it's expensive. So shopping around for deals and finding out little tricks and tips is the best thing. You're going to always need paper. Paper can be expensive, but there are deals out there. To the right here, I list just from Amazon. If you click on it, it's going to show you the base price there. So $35. I think it's 8 reams of paper. There's 500 pages in a ream, $35 for that. If you click at the other options, there's different options. Here's one for $31, but there's a shipping charge, right? So there's ways you can kind of shop around. There's also an option on Amazon where there might be damaged boxes. So it's going to be cheaper. The actual box that the papers come in might be all busted up, but the paper's okay, right? But it's cheaper. I'd say go for it, right? I've had, there are wholesalers that will do that as well. Maybe something on the box is defective, but the paper's fine. Go for it. If you see those deals, stock up, right? That's how much a box of letter size paper is. Legal is more expensive. So you don't have to get as much legal as you get letter. And I would not print everything on legal unless it asks us to, right? The PDF requires it. Just print legal per the PDF, what it asks for, because they're expensive. You want to buy your paper in bulk though. You don't want to buy just one ream at a time. It's more expensive that way, especially legal. Legal's crazy for one ream. You're going to always want to have toner and always have a backup of toner. That's another common way that you're going to miss out on a signing is if you get home, you have a signing, you realize you don't have toner. A lot of notaries will say, reassign it. If that happens to me, I run to the store. I pay that $100 or whatever it costs at Staples to get that toner. But it's always smart if you have a backup. Tricks about getting cheap toner. Getting the non-authentic toner can be a test and a trial and error. Sometimes cheap toner, you can tell, or your printer just won't recognize it, or it'll stop printing correctly. Or it's so cheap that maybe it's blotchy on the paper, or if you wipe your hand across the text, it'll actually come off. Oof. I've gotten a lot of non-authentic toner. That's the bomb though too, that's wonderful. So if you find a brand that's good, go for it. You just always want to have toner. A drum. So your printer, your laser printer, every year you're going to need a new drum if you're printing a lot, maybe more. They're a little bit more expensive. So I would always just have one on hand for the time that your printer gives you the drum error. I've used non-authentic to the printer, like non-HP or non-Brother drums, and they've worked. And then I've used others that don't. So the non-authentic, you're just going to have to try it. If you have a little extra money and say, hey, I'm going to see if I can save some money long-term by getting this non-authentic, try it. Get it from Amazon where you can return it if it's crap, right? If it doesn't work for you, return it and get your money back. As I've done less signings. I tend to just get the authentic just to be safe, because I don't want to have any of those kind of like my toner is splotchy issues. But you want to think economically too. Shop around, try to find the best deals. At the end of this slide, I'll give you some more ideas of how you can do that. Always have blue and black pens. I always have gel and ballpoint because some signers love them, either one, and some signers hate them. They love gel or they think it's hard to sign in gel. I always have a combination of both of those. Don't spend too much money, right? Like my favorite pens of all time are these like tool ones, but they're super expensive. So I do not bring these to my signings because signers will steal your pens every time. They'll go, wow, this is a great pen. And they'll look at you like, can I have it? And you're really like, when it's a tool pen, you're like, no, that cost me a lot of money. So don't even let them have that. I get, which one I like? It's called the Super Comfort. I get it from Staples. They're pretty reasonable. They're pretty comfortable. They're ballpoint, but they're really smooth. They look good. They produce a nice signature. If I lose these, they're not that expensive. Give them to the signer. I don't care, but I don't give my tool pens away. And you don't also want to be like, sorry, you can't have that pen. Like that makes the sign, it makes it awkward. So get cheap pens. Don't spend too much money on your pens. But I would say gel and ballpoint, just in case a signer complains about the pen. Just be safe. Sticky notes. I like to have sticky notes. Sometimes you need them to make notes on the documents. Say the signer doesn't know how to fill something out or refuses to sign it. That's how you can kind of make sure everybody knows. So sticky notes for sure. Binder clips, rubber bands, you have to have these. If you send back a set of docs in an envelope all loose, it's a pain when they come out. You can risk losing a document. It keeps everything together. I say invest in binder clips. I like them better than rubber bands. Rubber bands do break, and rubber bands will also kind of like, how do I put this? Like bend or bow your documents, if the rubber band's too tight, so it looks all weird and, bent up. I don't like that. I get binder clips. You can get them in bulk though. They don't have to be fancy, right? Just get a bulk binder clips. I have a ton of binder clips from escrow offices that just don't use them. They come in and they take them off and then they don't use them. So just collect them. Maybe give your borrower a rubber band and you send them back in a binder clip. There's just a tip. That's what I do, but it's really up to you. Just make sure they're all together. Also, in this day and age, we need personal protective equipment. In so many areas, mask mandates lifted, but some signers are comfortable with masks. And I know masks can be uncomfortable, but really the signer should dictate that. I just wear my mask going in, and if the signer says, you can take your mask off, and if I feel like, yeah, I'm comfortable doing that, then I'll take it off. And some signers, I've had a signer say, get that mask off because it made her uncomfortable, which was kind of weird. But if you're in an area that nobody wears masks and you don't wear a mask, okay, make sure you have like hand sanitizer. Little wipies are nice because, you're dealing with papers and people are signing your journal, and even just to sanitize your pens and your journal and your supplies, why not, right? My little tip here, we love Amazon. Again, Amazon's great. A quill for supplies is awesome. You can also obtain a membership at like an office chain like Staples for discounts and rewards. So Staples Plus membership for small businesses, you get a flat rate on paper. I think right now the flat rate for a ream of letter size 10 packages is $33, so it's a little cheaper. You also get rewards though. I like Staples because the more you buy, you do get money back. So every once in a while I'll go in there and they'll be like, oh, you've got like $40 off. You want to use it? And yeah, of course I want to use it. So there's also a way to get like a wholesaler's license, so where you can save some money at these stores as well and get lower prices. So those are just some tips and tricks. You want to be thinking about these things so you're making the most money that you possibly can. Okay, and lastly, let's talk about optional supplies. These are things that you do not have to have, but some people choose to get. An embossing stamp. I don't think it's required in any state that you have to have an embosser. If I'm wrong, put it in the chat and we'll look at it. But that's what my research told me. Sometimes we want the embosser because it's cool, right? It's cool to have an embosser and it like feels neat on the paper and it looks cool, but it's not necessary, especially for like loan signings, it's not necessary. So you don't need to get it. In fact, I not get it, you know, you're not going to need it. I've never needed an embosser. I think my mom needed it one time, but it was just the signer who requested it because maybe it looks more official. Just a regular ink stamp will do. This next one is a must for me, but in reality, it is optional, which is Adobe Pro DC. You can pay it monthly, and the monthly price is, I think, like $15, or you can buy it for the year for $179.88. With this, you can make adjustments to the PDF. So you can edit PDFs, you can shrink PDFs. So if your scan is like really big scan and you can't email it, you can reduce the size of that PDF. A lot of signing agents will they'll get a set of docs and they'll see their notarizations and they'll pre-fill in the information typed. So it looks like it was meant to be. It's always been there. So it looks good. There's all sorts of fun things you can do with it that can kind of customize your work a little bit. I use it for work, but I also do a lot of other things. As a signing agent, when I was doing it full time, I did not have this until scans became way more common, and then I realized I needed it to shrink scans down. It's optional though. You can get away with not having it. I like it, but if it's out of your budget, you can skip it for sure. Another thing that you don't really need is the E&O insurance, that optional E&O insurance. In general, you don't need it. However, some escrow companies and some signing companies will only hire you if you have it. So if you're like, you know, I really like to increase my ability to get signings, purchase $100,000 worth of E&O and put it on the different platforms, SnapDocs, .cloud, wherever. We had a notary who actually told us that they did this and they went from not getting any direct work from title to getting a lot of calls, because some clients, so this is how it works. Say they use SnapDocs. If your title company requires the notary to have E&O insurance, most of the time it's like $100,000. Basically your profile, if you don't have it, it won't show up in their search list. You're not even going to be an option for the clients if they require it and you don't have it. So purchasing it can potentially get you more access to more signings, right? Who doesn't need that? And it's not that expensive every year to get. So I, for example, do not have E&O insurance, additional, outside. No, I don't have any E&O insurance. I work with a signing company most of the time if I do signings, and I'm covered under their umbrella of, coast to coast 5 million or whatever, 10 million policy. But if you're wanting to get some direct work or maybe work from smaller signing companies that require you to have that, go for it. Something to think about, maybe something to invest in after you've gotten your feet wet, right? And just a quick note before we wrap it up, I'm going to tell you to beware of paid signing agencies or platforms. There are websites out there that say, you sign up for our platform and give us $25. We're going to get you a lot of work. They'll pay the $25 and you won't get a call. It's the way it is. Maybe you'll get one call, but I've talked to notaries and they've never gotten any calls. And so they've lost a little money. You shouldn't have to pay to get signings, right? Outside of your supplies and the things you need and all these things, you shouldn't have to pay. So I don't, even certain very popular sites will say, hey, if you have a paid membership here, you're going to get priority rating. Does not mean that you're going to get work from it, right? Nothing gets you more work than old-fashioned cold calling your title companies, cold calling signing companies, and being a good person and marketing yourself. You shouldn't have to pay. So that's just my little beware. And a quick note before we wrap it up. There's a lot of marketing, right? There's a big industry of people trying to sell you things. This, what we talked about, is really all you need. So I'm someone that if I start something new, I want it all, right? I want every bell and whistle. I want the bag that says notary and says my name too. But I've learned probably from my mom, right, Lisa Bittner, you don't need it. And especially when you're starting out, you don't have the extra money to do it, right? So you need to keep your costs low. So beware of overstocking yourself. If you've already done it, that's okay. Use the stuff you have. But in the future, this is really just the minimum that you need. And it's what's going to get you by. So just a quick note on that. Just don't want you spending too much money and then realizing, shoot, I didn't need any of that. But if you have any suggestions, or if you think, you know what, you're wrong, Virginia, this is what you need, email training@C2C Signings, email me, Virginia@C2CSignings.com, or put it in our live chat and we'll talk about it. Thank you for watching. That's our presentation.